So can you give us a little update in terms of the OZO platform? What has changed since the NAB set of announcements in terms of features and functionality?
Features and functionality, sure. Actually, I would say the most important change is that we shifted from a public positioning as a camera to really it's more of an complete ecosystem. So we're starting to plug some bits and pieces around the camera that's not designed to make an exclusive end-to-end solution where everybody's locked out, but rather to build a complete ecosystem where other players can work with us, we can work with them. That was interesting listening to Lucas's comment, and I was at Red too, so I remember those days very, very well. I would agree with them, some of those things. There are some pitfalls. We've actually been listening very hard to the market about what the early adopters have been saying, so I'll talk a little bit in a minute about stitching, because that goes to what Jaunt are doing and what we're doing. But I would say, our main philosophy as we go through the next few months leading up to IBC, which is the next big trade show, is really going to be seeing us put some other planks in here so that you can very clearly see that, yeah, you want to capture it. OZO is a great option, not the only one, but a great option. You want to stitch it. OZO is a great option, not the only one. You want to play it back. You want to do it live. We'll have product in all of those particular spaces.
Excellent. Referencing where Red was at in terms of its original launch, we all know, for those of us who worked with them at that point in time, yeah, firmware came out pretty regularly.
Mm-hmm.
How has Nokia been doing in terms of releases to bug fix and feature adds?
Sure. It was around about July 6 that we released the Software Suite 1.2. The major things there were, first of all, to the stitching question, you get on set, although Nokia is very unique in that we allow you to have a viewfinder on set, so you can actually see what you're doing in real time. Fair to say that getting a dailies, a VR dailies, was a long and drawn out process. So one of the things that we did is we put in a quick stitch, and like Lucas says, sometimes these names aren't very descriptive of image quality, because this quick stitch is actually very, very good. But what we're offering is on set on about a 6:1 ratio. So for a minute of content, 6 minutes later, you can have completely processed camera raw footage, color graded, stitched, and MP4 encoded, including audio, so basically ready to put on the HMD headset. So that was one of those sort of acceleration of the workflow things. In terms of image quality, like any raw image capture camera, you haven't baked everything in at the front end. You haven't done RGB processing, you haven't done color balancing, you haven't done grading, you haven't done noise reduction. There's a whole bunch of things you haven't done. You do those in post. So as a result, when you change the post-production software, you have the opportunity of upgrading the image quality of what you've captured, not only from that moment forward, but also everything that you've captured previously, because you can just go reprocess it. So we did a bunch of work there to upgrade the delivered quality, and we also added a mode into the camera where, although we have 8 cameras, we have this particular mode which originated out of live streaming needs, where we just simply use the 4 cameras through the middle. Why would we do that? 2 reasons. One is it reduces the load on the live stitching product to do the image processing in real time, which obviously you need to do when you're doing them with live. But also it allows us to basically say, well, look, we've got this bit rate budget that we can allocate across 10 cameras. If I've got a really challenging scene, one of the options I have is to say, look, I'd just rather capture this in 4 cameras and I'll allocate double the data rate to those remaining 4 cameras. And so you get a picture, you get a higher quality picture in stressful applications. When it's not a stressful application, you wouldn't want to do that, because there's just no point wasting bits on cameras that you don't need to.
So you're finding success when you're dealing with high spatial frequency, grass, trees, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, everybody compresses the imagery in their cameras, because if you didn't compress the images, you frankly couldn't build a camera in a package that makes it mobile. So it kind of defeats the purpose. I mean, go back to Red. It was not the first 4K camera. There was a DULSA, right? The problem with the DULSA was, well, it looked like a 35mm camera and had about the profile of a large 1930s camera. That wasn't the real problem. The real problem was there was a refrigerator that you had to tow behind it because they didn't compress the data. And what I think the red breakthrough was you got to have a camera you could put on your shoulder because it went to a compact flash card. That was a huge breakthrough. So yes, you always have to do compression to make things practically work. But what is compression? Compression is encoding information, and information is the rate of change of information frame to frame. So it's about detail, and it's about movement within the image. Not movement that moves super quick, because as that goes by, you inherently have blur. It's motion that's like really highly detailed and moving relatively slowly. That doesn't frankly occur very much, but you can certainly walk into a pine forest and find scenarios that will do that for you. But in this environment, you'll never hit that problem, right? Bring in a whole bunch of pine trees and place them around, and I could artificially create something that would be challenging to cameras. So it's really a question of test the scene. If it all works fine, no need to invoke 4 cameras, but you have that there as an option for you. And when we do live streaming, we're always doing 4-camera mode.
Okay, and really what that sounds to me like is the response to DPs looking at the Nokia camera initially and questioning their level of control. So what you've done is given them an additional level of control that they can select in how that content is captured.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. I wouldn't want people to go away and say, hey, there was a problem and they had to invoke something to go fix it. But rather, we had a need for a different mode which originated out of live streaming. The byproduct of that is we have this extra capability, and now it's an option. What we've seen over the last, for August, OZO didn't ship until the first week of March. It's March, April, May, June, July. We're about 6 months in. In 6 months, we've seen this thing all around the world. We know that people have taken it to the top of Mount Everest, so we know it works in cold weather. We know we have units in Dubai, which is pretty warm out there. We keep seeing it popping up, and we're internally going like, it's almost like, where's Waldo? So we don't have control over this, but we know there were OZOs at Wimbledon, at the NBA Finals, UFC fights, Pacquiao fight. That was fun. My boss called me up and says, who knows about this job? Why? Well, if you look, that's Pacquiao, that's the guy in the middle of the ring, and look at the post on the back corner, there's an OZO there. So, yeah, that's true. So we have a lot of units out there. They're doing all sorts of jobs, all sorts of environments. This particular mode just helps us do some of the more stressful ones at a higher quality. Excellent.
So in terms of what the most popular use cases, the shooting scenarios that you're finding the OZO going into, is there a short list of really, if you're going to shoot this, this is the camera that you'd want to use?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would reiterate what Lucas was saying, was don't treat this camera like it's an Arri or a Red or a cinema camera. Not because it isn't of that quality, but fundamentally those cameras are designed to do something different. And we talked about this in our last conversation, was don't take a VR camera and shoot the scene from the outside in. Try and put the camera in the middle as if it was a person, a human being, and put it right in the middle of the action. Try and shoot the action from the inside out. And in that way, you're getting a totally fresh perspective on the story. So having said that as a qualification, because the camera is like a human head, physical size, I mean, there's one over here, there's one over there, it's very lightweight and very portable. So this ought to be your first option whenever you've got a portability need or a discrete need. So the fight thing that we talked about, the boxing match, we actually mounted it on one of the 4 corner posts. It's important that it's not a very large camera and it's obstructing somebody's view. So the fact that we could get it right there close to the action and still be discrete was a major plus point. And I think that actually spurred many of the other sports applications that people went and said, hang on a minute, I like that. Let me now try it on this sport, this sport, this sport, this sport. So definitely mobility is one of them. Also, we can't lose sight of stereoscopic. So I think there's a big difference in terms of the way human brain perceives the world. If we're doing it as a surround sound but flat or monoscopic, that's entertaining. It's no doubt that is entertaining. There's nothing wrong with it, but that's not the same level of believability and immersion that a stereoscopic is. Because when we look around the world, everything is in stereo. And that's essentially what we've tried to do with the camera, is build a human head and pick up the world stereoscopically. And interesting what was just said here about the microphones. We do also pick up 8 channels of audio, and we do the mix down to binaural presentation as part of our playback. So that's another sort of touch point here. We need to sort of chat with the guys. And actually, frankly, I'm not sure there's a lot of competition as much as co-opetition going on in the VR world right now. We're all working to build the biggest market that we can.
Certainly, and the industry statistics about growth certainly seem to support the idea that there's plenty of room for everyone. So one of the things that we really take upon ourselves here at Radiant Images is we don't want to be the organization that has a solution, therefore we're going to try to fit it to what you need. We try to literally get a hold of every potential solution so that you've got the full range of choice there. And we'll say that our vendors have been extremely responsive in terms of listening to us as the representative voice of a lot of their clients in features and bug fix and hopefully some influence on product roadmap. Why don't we just quickly touch, because we are a little bit short on time, on the live stream announcements that you made and maybe what we might look forward to hearing about at IBC?
Sure. So I mentioned earlier camera towards ecosystem, and what do they mean by that? At NAB, we showed our first insight to live streaming. So there's been a lot of discussion and perhaps some misunderstanding that the camera itself does live streaming, and we've said no, it doesn't, and that's partly because we have in mind this broadcast streaming mode. The camera does stream data directly from the camera, but that's at best case, you would say that contribution link, that's like 1.5 gigabits a second data coming from the camera. That's not a live stream mode per se, but technically it's coming down a cable, so yes, it is live stream. So there's a little confusion that we've had there on our website, perhaps, saying that. So that's always been there. What we're talking about is taking that data rate, 1.5 gigabits a second. Well, if the observant will notice that is HD SDI, standard HD SDI. Taking that data and running it into a product that we call OZO Live. What this is, it's a special class of video server. I mean, i.e., it is a computer with some video capture cards in it. And what it's doing is it's taking the 1.5 gigabits a second data from the camera, which represents the compression of all the camera viewpoints. And in that server box with the appropriate software, it then does real-time color grading, and it also does real-time stitching. So what comes out of this box is a 4K resolution video signal at 30 frames a second. That would then do one of two things. And I'll come back to the first thing, what it does in a minute. And if it doesn't do that first thing, it goes directly from that box into an encoder, like an Akamai encoder, Elemental Technologies encoder, and that encodes it in MPEG-dash format at, 8, 10, 12 megabits a second, whatever's appropriate, and that streams up to the cloud, to your CDN, and your CDN then delivers it to wherever it needs to go. The alternative to that single camera into the encoder box is what we started to preview at NAB, and we'll do more of this at IBC, and I think this is what makes it truly unique. Because that signal is 4K at 30 frames a second, we could also put it into a 4K production switcher. And we've started to show we can run multiple cameras. And it's almost analogous to, hey, look, I'm bringing my little truck, my production truck, and I've got 4 HD cameras. I'm going to put them, in this sporting event or the concert. I'll put 3 of them on stage and 1 in the audience, and I'm going to live switch them. You all know how to do that in an HD domain. And the 4K domain is basically the same thing. You just swap out the cameras and you swap out the switcher. What we're basically saying is OZO Live product, think of OZO Live as if it was a camera CCU, and you've got an OZO camera, the CCU feeds into the switcher. Okay, well, give me 3 cameras, 4 cameras, 5 cameras, and basically let the technical director just switch the signals as he would any other way. And the output from the switcher is what goes over to the encoder. And that is a huge breakthrough for VR, because you can treat VR like truly a live multi-camera broadcast production. And that's where we're really going hard with the OZO Live product. And I say it's a product, it will be a for-sale product right around the IBC timeframe. What we've been doing is at NAB we showed the concept. Since then we've been doing proof of concept, because obviously on a live project you can't have any, well, it used to work and now it doesn't. We've got to really shake it down. So we've been going off and doing like live soccer games and concerts, and our production team has been running around the world just to basically make sure that everything is absolutely nailed for when we launch it as a formal product at IBC thereabouts, then everything's buttoned down and tight.
So very much reminiscent of what Lucas was telling us, the cautionary note of putting newfangled technology out into production too early, that you guys are taking the responsible route and really making sure that this is ready to go.
Absolutely, and I think there's a real difference between when you shoot content on set, yes, there are also the associated risks. Now, don't go too early, but when it's a live production, that sensitivity is magnified 100-fold. It's got to work, because you don't have a makeup. I mean, if you miss that goal, you miss that goal. That's the end of the story. So you have to make sure that that stuff works, absolutely fundamentally works well.
Excellent. So after the break, a number of the Nokia cameras are available here to get up close and take a look at, including the control interface. You can take a look at OZO Creator, which is the stitch environment that's made available along with the camera. And we can talk to you a little bit about product features in terms of where Radiant Images is going to be to match the announcements by Nokia forthcoming, and be able to provide you yet another option for live stitch in addition to what we've been doing already. So Stuart, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker